Hello, everyone. I am Saleha, and this is Chai, Chat, and Community. Tonight, I'm chatting with Vasalia Govender, who is standing for the local Victorian Council elections from Mitchell Shire. Hello, Vasalia. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Saleha. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for
And
coming.
a very good evening to all your listeners.
Thank you. Before we start with questions, would you like to tell us something about yourself, Vasalia?
Yeah, sure. I was born and raised in South Africa during the apartheid era. And 23 years ago, I immigrated with my husband and my now eldest daughter to Australia. I decided to leave because I just didn't, and I couldn't see my daughter living that life that we had to. So I'm not sure how much you know about South Africa and its apartheid era, Salaha, but segregation meant that we were treated differently. So if we went to a restaurant, for example, they you couldn't go and sit in that restaurant, so you'd have to go through the back window, and you get served through the back window because there was a strict rule that it was about, unfortunately, white people. It's the same with the beaches. We had our own beach to go to, and we could not mix and mingle. So when we had our daughter, I thought, well, my mother has her family living in Australia, so we heard very good things about Australia, and we decided, yes, we'll leave. My family wasn't happy with that because my entire family, like my brothers, sisters, and my mom and dad, are back in South Africa. But I did it for my daughter, and plus, my in-laws, they had family here, so that's when we came. So when I arrived in Australia, the first thing I did was look for a job, and I took a job as a disability support worker. I've been working there for 23 years until June this year. The good thing about working in that sector was that I worked in an environment where it was just a melting pot of people from CALD background. So we had people from Nigeria, from Ghana, from India. I think we might have just had our own United Nations. So it was really, really good. It was good for me because I could settle in. I had people that I could relate to, that I could understand. And yes, I stayed there for 23 years. Every time I applied for a job, I'd tell my supervisor I'm leaving, and then I have a chat, and I go, no, I can't leave these people. These are my family. So I formed my own family at work as well. Unfortunately, this year in June, I did decide to leave the sector. It was a very sad occasion for the whole staffing team, but yeah, that was a decision that I had to make. What I found though when I started work was that it was a kind of reverse apartheid back at work, in that workers who had so much right under the Fair Work Act, under the EBA, or under the OHS Act had very little say on how they did their work or about safety. So I became a health and safety rep and a union delegate, and I was as a HSR, I was kind of nominated in 1999. I became a HSR in 2000, and every 3 years after that, we had an election, and I was elected unopposed, I think, over four terms. This is where I had my first experience of how diversity works. So, for example, Salaha, before I could become a HSR, we didn't have a person that represented us that could relate to us. And so when I became a health and safety rep, I found that role very easy because I could relate to the staff. They found it comfortable to sort of have a chat to me. And my designated work group was actually one of the most active and safe work group. And what I learned from that experience is that you have this conversation with managers or with anyone, and they talk about diversity, and we've got a policy on diversity. We employ people from these cult backgrounds or cult or ethnic backgrounds, or we employ people from who are disabled. But the problem for me is that you can have diversity and you can have those multicultural policy. It does not necessarily mean that you are improving the position of people that come from that minority background. So, for example, with my experience as a HSR, I could do that because I understood that the people that I was working with, English was not their first language.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if English is not your first language, how can we expect people to read those 12, 13 pages of policy and understand that? So what I did, for example, with our chemical management plan, I actually took out photographs and used that as a cue to teach people about chemical safety. So this is when I realized that this is what diversity is about. It's about someone representing us, someone that we choose. And it's also about, when you talk about promoting and embracing diversity, you need to also look at providing that kind of leadership role. Yeah. So it's a case where if you cannot see it, you cannot believe it. And the people at my place of work, they believed in diversity because they saw someone like me representing them. And this is where that role modeling is very, very important. We did not just have active reps, but we kind of actually increased that diversity. So we had people from all different backgrounds putting up their hands for that role because they saw me in that role and they could identify. So I think, in the absence of this role modeling and leadership from people that we see and, as relevant to representing us, I think it's very hard to truly believe this whole concept of diversity. And so this leads me to that question is, why did I put my hand up? It's about that concept of diversity and something that needs to be sort of introduced in our local government. It's basically a voice for us, representing us. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think this is kind of half of what you've said, but I'll ask you anyway. Is this what made you interested in politics?
Not at the beginning. So I actually signed up to do candidate school. So Victorian Council runs candidate school. So I did put up my hand last year and I thought about it and go, nah, I can't do this. I thought, nah, this is too hard because I can't see anyone else in that position. And so again, it's that role modeling. If you can't see it, you can't believe it. So this year, the workers at work actually told me, they go, look, give it a go and see what happens. And I go, okay, I'll do it. So I did sign up for candidate school and the training was absolutely amazing. So through candidate school, I met some absolutely beautiful people who actually showed me that I can do this, and why shouldn't it be someone like me? So with that training and the understanding that I can give this a go, I put up my hand. And then coincidentally in June this year, one of my friends within the community contacted me to help her run a COVID survey for people from that cultural and linguistic diversity, group. So I did. And when I was helping her put the survey together and the responses, I wasn't surprised at some of the comments. So some of the comments was like, our kids have friends at school, and yet, as a young mom, I drop my kids off at school and I come home and I go home to an empty house. I don't know how to fit into the community. I don't have friends here. And this is what made me look at some of the policies that our council has. And I couldn't find any real action in terms of how multiculturalism fits into the decisions that was being made. I then, had a bit of a walk through Wallen, and Wallen is growing, both Wallen and Beveridge.
Yes.
They're not only just growing in its size, but then its diversity as well. Yeah. So I go, well, if we look at council, again, the whole concept of diversity, if you don't have someone from that minority group council, and it's sending two strong messages. One, you question whether you're good enough to live in this community. And two, it's like, how am I being represented? So decided, let's have a go. I mean, I knew that during COVID, it's going to be really, really hard for me to campaign. I'm a first-time candidate. People don't know me that well in this community because I was working for 23 years, both night shift, day shift. My hours of work was like 12 to 13-hour shifts, so I had no
can
time.
understand that. Yes,
I had no time to actually develop those relationships with the community. And for us, Saleha, isolation is a big issue down here.
yes.
When we first moved into Wallen, I believe that we were the first Indians in Wallen. And then a few other, we had some Muslim families live next door to us. And what's happening is that we have people throw stones on our roofs. Yeah, I had my little temple. So someone came into the yard and they actually broke all the murtis and all of that. So we were actually told that, we were being targeted because of our race and we should consider leaving Wallen. And we go, no, we love it. It's truly is a beautiful place to live. I love that country feel. And plus that, working 12-hour, 13-hour shifts. When I used to drive home from work in the morning, I'd actually de-stress on the way because of the drive. I don't know if it makes sense, but by the time I came home,
I understand. Yes.
I recovered from my shift. So we said, nope, my husband and I said, no, we're not going, we're staying. And this is when people during COVID would say to me, how are you coping? And I go, we're doing fine. We've been doing this for 20 years now. So isolation is not new for me. And this is where I think, during this COVID period, I also joined the writing group. So Nikki Samos, he's putting together a group of ladies that's writing a story. And I started writing my story and I joined the group. And I actually loved it because although we come from those different backgrounds, all the ladies on this group, it's amazing how similar our experiences are. And, to be honest, I think we've moved on from that, those attacks of throwing stones and stuff like that. And I thought, well, this is a good thing because this gives my kids that hope that this is all settled. And it's also even getting onto council actually shows that this community is open to diversity and they can embrace that.
Are you the first, called lady standing for elections? Or have there been people before you?
I think I am the first called lady. I think this is the first time in 20 years that we actually have 3 Indians putting up their hands, and that is remarkable.
Sorry, no, you go and then I'll ask you the question.
I think it is remarkable, Saleha, because it's a good stepping stone for our kids. They have confidence. It just paves this road for just how good this community, not just the community, but when we come to Australia, we're told about this is a land of opportunity. And so far, I must say it actually has been. For example, if I was back home in South Africa, I don't think I would have owned my own home. I don't think I would have been driving a car, even having short hair. I don't think I would have had my hair this short. Working, having that independence. I've even studied, whilst we're raising 3 kids. I went back to university. I studied. I from 2010 to 2017, I studied and I actually finished my master's degree in occupational health and safety. I don't think I would have done that in South Africa. So Australia is the land of opportunity. And so that was one of the reasons why I've also put up my hand and going, well, the opportunity is there. There's no point.
Yes. I'm going to just go back on something you said because it actually got me thinking. I came here 16 years ago and I love Melbourne. I love where I live. I have so many friends here. But when we came here, we came with our two daughters. We went to the council because that was the first place I think you go to, because you don't have family here. Nobody actually talked about, or we have a group where you can come and meet new people like you who have migrated, or people who can help you. There was one lady, I forget her name, and in the council, she was so amazing, but that was on a one-to-one basis. She told me about, she said, you need to do this, you need to go to a school, these are the procedures, this is a GP, this is what you need to do, this is what. And I was like, wow, if I had nobody, and nobody from the council did it. I think it's these little groups that we have, the Bengali Association, the Punjabi Association, you kind of tend to gravitate towards them because you kind of hold on to what you've left behind. In your council, are you doing that, or are you planning to do that? Introduce newcomers, because one of the things that the Australian government now asks for, if you migrate, is that you should be willing to go to country Victoria.
Okay. So, Saleha, I do know that Mitchell Shire Council has put out a social justice framework, and I have sent an email querying, what's happening in that space of multiculturalism. So they have started what I believe is a multicultural network, but I'm yet to see any minutes of the meeting, or even find out who's on that council, who's on that committee. So I think this is where the first thing, if I'm elected, this is where I would start. Like, you have a multicultural network.
Yep.
How's the community going to become involved in it? Because if I don't know about it, how do I join up? So I think the first thing is it needs to go back to a focus group, have that discussion, who's on it. If you have a multicultural network, then it must be people from that multicultural
Absolutely
group,
yeah? Yes, somebody who's been through this.
Yep. And I think the second issue is that once you have that group set up, and this is where that whole representation role comes in. It's, if you've got a representative on that multicultural group, they're the ones who should be presenting your views and my views, that, this is what I want. I would want, for example, when new people come into the community, they can go up to the council. The council has a pack set up for them.
Yes,
these are the services we provide. This is where you go for help. You can provide that in other language, or you can provide, make sure there's an interpreter, and make sure that there's someone that they can relate to as well. Yeah, because you've got people from refugee backgrounds, from countries, where they are escaping this war. They're coming in with trauma, and it does help if you can see someone that you can relate to, that you can feel comfortable talking to, because that's what I found back at work. And when people were comfortable talking, that's when you got them engaged, and that's when you built that whole community spirit. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think the first thing you do is start with, okay, we've got a group together. Who's representing them and how? Yeah, because representation is about putting your points across. So, for example, when I was a HSR, I'd represent the views of the workers. But to represent the views of those workers, I had to sit down with them and have a conversation. Yeah. And if I can't relate to them, there's no way those barriers are going to come down. There's no way those walls are going to come down.
Thank you.
Right?
Yep.
It's the same for people with disabilities. We should not be choosing the services for them. They should be the one driving those discussions and telling us, hey, this is what I want. You've got a swimming program. I want a swimming program for me. I'm a disabled person. I would like you to provide that service for me. It shouldn't be coming from me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Agree with you on that. Vasalia, you are an essential worker and you work in the disability sector. And one of the promises that you are making for this election is you're going to support the vulnerable. How will you support the community, and how will you support them?
Again, Sarah, I think, if elected, my work's cut out. So again, you've got to know the people in the community. So, for example, I know that Love in Action is a community group that's delivering groceries to families. Yeah. So it means sitting down with them and trying to figure out, okay, what is the help that they need to help those families. Yeah. The second issue is that we've got people from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander in our community, but you don't see of them. You don't see them, you don't hear of them. So the first thing we need to do is start engaging before we even decide what services they need. So it just comes back to that whole thing where we got to go back and do that groundwork, start engaging people. And when we start engaging and start having that conversation, then only can we build this map to figure out what are the help, what's the services, and how can we help. And then the last thing I'd like as a person, someone coming and telling me, Vasalia, I need you, you need to go to this service, or this is the service we're providing. And I go, well, no, that's not what I want.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's all about this advocacy and this empowerment. And that's why it goes back to diversity. It's not just good enough having those policies. What we need is common sense and the wisdom to actually put them in practice.
Thank you. Wow, very impressed.
Thank you.
I hope people are listening, and I hope I hope your council people are listening to this, what you have to say, because they need to put their words into action, because at the moment all I see about diversity is just on paper. I'd love to see more happening. If it's not happening in Melbourne, it is I don't know where else it's happening. So yes, I'd like to see more happening. So more power to you, Vasalia.
Yeah, I think, Saliha, it's not only about diversity. I mean, speaking to candidates, and especially those that are from that minority group who are running for the first time, it is hard. It is absolutely hard work campaigning, and simply because, like in my case, I didn't choose not to be a part of my community. I think that decision was made when we moved down here, and when we were targeted because we were from that Indian background. And I think, people in my community, for example, they don't know me. They don't know about the work that I do because I am an essential worker, and people like me, all we do is we roll up our sleeves and we get the work done. Yeah. And so, campaigning has been really hard for me and a lot of the first time candidates, because we're not good at promoting ourselves. We're good at doing the work. Yeah. And that's the leadership. It's like, getting the work done, mobilizing the troops and saying, this is what we need to do it. Yeah. But if you had to have a chat to, say, for example, people from the Injured Workers Peer Support Network that, I support on the Facebook, they would tell you a different story about me because they know me, because I've worked with them. So, for example, the previous minister, Jill Hennessy, appointed a QC to review the Workers' Compensation Act. And I've been helping injured workers through the system now on my own up until 2015, 2016. And then that's when I joined the Facebook group. It's absolutely devastating, to think that people went to work in the morning, and then no fault of their own, they get injured. As a result, they're not only dealing with the injury, like some of the workers have lost their homes because of that work injury. Divorce, it's horrendous. And
mental health,
the physical health, having to deal with a system that basically chews you up and spits you out. So, if my community had to speak to those injured workers, they would tell you that, every work cover claim that I was involved in was accepted because I would use the legislation and actually get that claim accepted. With the workers back at my place of work, they will tell you, as a union delegate and as a health and safety rep, I pushed every boundary I can to get them what they deserve under the OHS Act or our award agreement. So these are some of the stuff the community would not know because I've done that at work. And I think this is why I had huge issues with this council election going ahead, because we don't have that opportunity to go out there and talk to people and say, okay, these are the skills that I have. I know how to represent people. If this election was deferred, we could do that. We could run a really good campaign, but it is what it is, and we're trying our best. And so, if there's anything I could say to people who are listening in, if you have a candidate in your ward that's a new candidate running for the first time, give them a fair go. I mean, we talk about this Aussie spirit about giving people a fair go. Yeah. So there's our opportunity for our communities to put that into practice. Give people a fair go. Just don't write them off because you don't know them, that they're not a familiar face. Get to know them.
And give them because they're from a different background to yours.
Yeah.
That plays a big role. We would like to think it doesn't, but that's not true.
And I'd like to think that, in Australia, we've progressed and that we give people a fair chance, a fair opportunity.
I hope so too.
Hopefully. I mean, look, Sarah, we know whether that worked or not when, the results are announced and we've got few of our people on council. Yeah.
I hope so.
I hope so too. But yeah, look, it is hard, for first-time candidates, for candidates from that minority groups to be running. But look, I think, the fact that we put up our hand shows that we are genuine, we're interested, and we want to be part of that progressive group of people, or be part of that progress and move our communities forward.
Absolutely. So we talked about your Injured Worker Support Network.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the local multicultural women's group.
So we've started a multicultural group on Facebook, and this was apparently supposed to come out from that multicultural network that nobody quite knows about. So what we do on the Facebook group, it's only for women, and we try and empower each other and kind of move each other along. I think this was really, really important, Salaha. So I'm not sure if you would be aware of the number of deaths of Indian women in Whittlesea. Yeah. So
not in Whittlesea. Sorry, no, not in Whittlesea. I know in Melbourne.
So there were about 7, I think, if I recall. Wow. And that prompted me to say, well, this is a good resource, this Facebook page, where we can talk to each other and support each other. But I think in general, women, all women, we tend to not have that support. So if we do, we're just too afraid to speak up. And I know this, again, from my experience at work, that, have people come in and we just instantly know that something's wrong, and we'd have that conversation. And this is where that family system came in, that, we're not related to you by blood, but because of our similarities, we took care of each other. And this is where things like this Multicultural Women's Facebook group is important, because we not only share stuff, but people on that page know that you can send each other a private message and say, look, I'm not traveling well. Can I have a chat? And, it's a small step forward, but I think it's just a good resources for women to have, to know that there is help out there, and all you need to do is just talk to someone.
Ask for it. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if I may ask, these 7 women who died, did they kill themselves, and what was the reason?
So they did commit suicide. It's been a while since I read the article. So I came across the article in the paper, and then it was on social media as well. Look, from what I can recall, I think one of the issues was that social isolation. And that's a big issue, Saleha. I mean, we've seen it during COVID. People were not coping with that social isolation. Yeah. So just imagine with people from that ethnic background, when you come into a new country, new faces, you got to start your life all over again. You are, because new environment, new people, new rules. And that isolation just grows and grows and grows. And then if you're in a community where you do not know how to access that mental health services, or you don't know how to access any help, what do you think is happening? You're not getting any better. Not only is the situation becoming worse, but you lose hope, you lose faith. It impacts the rest of your family. So I think this is why, when we talk about diversity, this is why you need people like us on council, so we can actually drive that policy or drive that decisions when you're talking about types of mental health services you are providing. You can't take the idea that one size fits all.
It doesn't.
It doesn't actually work. No, it doesn't, because we're all different people. We come from that different background. I know, like when I first came to Australia, it was a huge culture shock for me. It was, because I grew up in a totally different environment, with the segregation and with us living in our own little communities. It was an eye opener for me. And even like learning to drive, I go, wow, I can do this now. Yeah. Studying and going to work, and then working with people that were not only Indians, but from every different background, from every corner of the world. Not only was that an amazing experience, but that was something that I had to adjust to as well, how I speak. And, because I remember at first, one of my work colleagues used to touch me on my shoulder, and I just moved back. He goes, Vas, I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. I go, no, look, it's just that, coming from that Indian background, that's not something that I'm used to. But now it's like second nature. They just touch me and I go, yeah, what do you want? Yeah. So, and the thing is, like, I was lucky because I had people
you
like
could adapt. Yes, you can adapt to the country.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I had that help to adapt to the country because I was working with people that I could identify with. But back here, I couldn't really adapt to my community because it was very isolated. I'm glad that, from June this year, that's actually changed, that I'm starting to actually get more involved with the community. I mean, like last week, Sunday, we did a dance in the park with Nikki. Nikki organized the Jerusalem Challenge, and I was out there with her and another lady, and we did a dance in the park. And if you told me 20 years ago that I'd be doing that, I'd have a bit of a chuckle and go, no way am I doing that.
You should put up the video. That's a different side to you.
That's how this whole diversity, works. It's that when you are comfortable being part of that community, there's benefits. Yeah, I mean, we all had a chuckle on that day. It was good for our mental health as well. Yeah, but and this is why I always say, Salah, that Salaha, when you look at the word diversity, it really frustrates me. It angers me because it is used so often, and yet it's misused.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agree with you there 100%.
Yeah.
If you are elected to the council, what are your list of priorities?
I think the first thing I do is actually throw a party when I'm elected to, just celebrate the fact that
I hope all the lockdown is then over and I'll come and join you. I love a party.
I hope so too, because that would be a big party. Look, to be honest, again, Salaha, it goes back to representation. So during my letterboxing, I'm lucky. I had my three kids, and my husband helped me, and we did 6,000 houses. So during that walks, I did have some conversation with some of the residents. Some of them have emailed me, and I've spoken to some on the phone. I think some of the issues that they've raised with me, for example, are rates. Rates not just too high, but during this time with COVID, people have lost their jobs. They're struggling to pay their mortgage, to put food on the table. So I think one of the priorities would be to sit down with council and have that discussion. How can we provide a bit of rate relief for at least the next 12 months? People need help, and we need to help.
Yes.
Yeah. I think one of the other issues is there's been a draft plan put out for the King and Queen Street. And that's caused some real concerns about the environment. So, losing some of that public open spaces. Again, because my role is of representation, and have the right to say, look, we need to review that draft plan. People would have I know a number of people have put in submissions, so we need to go back on the drawing board, and have a look. What are people telling us? What's going to work and what's not going to work? I do know that there's an issue with the roads and the footpaths, and I've been hearing about that often. I've seen it on my rounds. I've read on council's page that they say that they have a schedule of inspection, and then they work out how to fix the roads and the footpaths. But then at the same time, I've had another resident write to me and say that he's been waiting 8 years for some work done. So I think, again, putting together my experience as a HSR in this situation, you'd have to have a look at that inspection record, have a look at the schedule of inspections, and work out what are the priorities. Waiting 8 years for some roadworks,
no, not acceptable.
That's ridiculous.
No.
Yeah. One of the other issues is that I spoke about beverage and wine growing in size. Yeah. And so in a growing community, you're going to need that infrastructure. It needs to match that growth. So that would be one of the issues, matching that up. This one of the other issues, I think, for a while now, we've been talking about a swimming pool for Wallen. There's been a lot of talk. I know there's the land, but there's no plans for that. So that's something that I'd like to have a discussion with as well. The social justice framework, well, I think that, again, needs to be scratched, and we need to start from the beginning. You can't have a social justice framework without main contributors there, and the main contributors would be those people from that diverse background. So I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of work for council, a lot of work that involves community engagement, and more, I think, kind of more emphasis on the fact that there needs to be proper and genuine consultation with the community.
Thank you. Unemployment. Big issue. How are you going to tackle it?
I'm not a current councillor, so I'm just going to give you my opinion. One, I think you'd have to go back and have a look at the objectives that councils put together. So what are their specific strategies for job creation? Do we look at how we sort of diversify industry to sort of enable that economic growth? And with it as well, Salaha, comes the other components of education and training. Yeah. Again, as I said, it's about starting on what council has, doing a bit more research, talking to the people, and then just developing that plan. So what are some of the jobs that we can do? We know that this is a rural area. We've got young children, there's young people in our community that are also going to be looking for jobs. How do we fit all of this together? So again, I'm not going to be able to sit here and say, I'm going to do this, because I can't. I'd have to go back, sit down with, there's going to be 8 other councillors, sit down with them and map it out. How do we actually create those jobs for our community? And I think the first thing would be people in our community needs to get those jobs first before we outsource.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's about looking after our own. Yeah.
And that's how it should be, isn't it? Before you get people from outside, you look after your own.
Yes, you always take care of your own. I mean, one of my concerns is that we've got young kids who are finishing school and, they go to university. They can't find jobs down here locally. There are no jobs here. So how do we balance that creation of jobs? But how do we also move forward in developing one and building and growing it, but making sure that, we reduce that environmental impact? So I think during this campaigning period, I've actually learned that the job of the council of councillors is not as easy as we think it is. It's not going to
No,
be,
it's not
slam
taking
dunk.
out bins and collecting rates. It's more than that.
Yes, it's more than that. And I'm glad my, 23 years of experience in the disability sector advocating for people with disabilities, my 20 years of experience in advocating for workers, these are skills that are going to help me, in this role. So whilst again that I'm new to the role, doesn't mean I don't have those skills. And that would
Absolutely.
be for, I think, every one of our candidates that are standing for the first time, every one of our candidates that come from that minority groups as well. And yes, going back to our previous conversation, we shouldn't be overlooked because we're different.
Yes.
Difference is good. It
Yes,
brings a lot
absolutely.
to the
Yes.
table.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couple of more questions before
Yes.
we say goodbye. Why you and not somebody else for the local council? What makes you stand out?
Why not me, Salha?
Oh, absolutely. If I was in your council, I'd vote for you. I've just heard you speak. But, to everyone else who's listening, um, I don't know whether it's called convincing, but to even tell them that, you, and I know you're the new face, you're the fresh face, you bring in a lot of experience, you're going to bring in diversity to the council. Are those enough reasons to get you into the council for your residents?
I think diversity is one of it. Our council should represent the people in the community. Again, there's a big minority group that, we're growing, we're becoming bigger. So we need one of us representing us. South Ward currently has no female representative. And I think that's very important to have a female. Yeah. And why? I've raised my 3 kids here. I remember when I had my twins, I put them in the pram and would, take them out, push them out and there's no safe place to push them in that pram. So most of the time, if there was no footpath, I'd be pushing them on a road. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And 15 years later, that hasn't changed. So why can't we have a toddler park, for example? I think, having me on council means that you have a progressive person. Yeah. Someone that can actually move us forward, someone that can make those changes. And to be honest, if you've had to have a conversation with the people that I've worked with, they would tell you that I am very motivated. I'm very focused. If I have a job to do, I do it. I give it 110%. And I think I don't take no too quickly. Like if you're going to tell me no, you're going to tell me no about why. Yeah. And it's the same with council. You're going to need someone that understands representation, but someone who also understands how to influence decision making. Yeah. I think that's one of the qualities I bring. I think the other issue as well is that for the future generation and for our current, for our kids, it's about that, again, that role modeling, about telling them that you can do this. Our kids have Australian passports. We have Australian passports. I don't understand why we waited so long to do this. If we truly want to belong to our community, we truly want to be part of our community, we also need to play our part and stand for council and give it a go. So in terms of explaining why am I a better candidate, I don't know if I'm necessarily a better candidate, but I have the skills that we need. We need the skills of someone who understands representation, and representation is not making a decision for you. Representation means advocating on your behalf. I have the skills to influence decision making, or else I don't think I would have been at HSR for 20 years. Yeah. I have I've worked in the disability sector, so I understand what it is to not only work with people with disabilities, but to actually empower people with disabilities. I know what it means to be a person with disabilities because, Salaha, working in the sector, we had to fight for everything for our residents. They just didn't get things. No, it was the staff. We fought for every little thing that they needed. Yeah. So I'm used to that role of actually finding and advocating for stuff. So that's one of the reasons I make a good candidate. I've been fighting for injured workers and I haven't stopped fighting. So I think all of these experiences in these previous roles gives me the skills to actually sit on council and represent not just women, not just people from that diverse background, but every one of us, because at the end of the day, we all call ourselves Australians. And if we're truly Australians, then that community spirit of representing all of us, giving us all a fair chance and giving us all a fair go.
Thank you. Before we end tonight's program, would you like to say something else? Anything else you would like to share?
Oh, look, I think this is just thinking again about those new candidates. And I am very concerned, speaking to some of them, just how difficult it is. So I'd like to say, look, we're all in this together. Take care of your mental health. That's the most important. At the end of the day, Salaha, if we don't get to be on council, that's okay. There's always another time.
There's always a next time, absolutely.
There's always a next time. But I think, at the end of the day, we're mums. There's men, also running their dads. We have kids, and I think we shouldn't put so much energy into this about, getting that seat and it has to be done, that we forget about the important stuff.
Yes.
Council elections will come and it'll go, but our kids, they're there constantly for us. And so, some of the conversation I've been having with other candidates is look after your mental health. And I do that myself as well. Your mental health is important. Your family is important. And to people who are voting in this election, just don't vote for someone because they've been on council for this many years. Don't vote for someone just because you know them, or don't vote for someone because you're just too afraid to change your vote. I mean, with change,
yes,
you get a
change
good,
is the essence of life.
Things.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
With change come good things. I mean, if I didn't change my my life by leaving South Africa and coming here.
Say that, yes, if you didn't leave South Africa,
I wouldn't have all the things that I have. And I wouldn't have met that many people. And again, there's so many people that I've helped all along, the last 23 years. So change is good. And I think, that's one of the concerns new candidates have, is that people will be sitting there and thinking, well, this is a new candidate. I don't know them. Do we want to change? Go for it. I say go for it. We always start from scratch. You start with something new and you build it up.
Absolutely.
So give those new candidates a go, and hopefully they don't let you down. But, you never know if you try. So it's the same with us. You'll never know what we bring to the table unless you give us that opportunity.
And tomorrow's always another day.
And hopefully in Melbourne, that's a warm, sunny day.
Oh, no, it's raining. Oh, no. It's raining. It's raining. So that's Melbourne for you. Thank you so much, Vasalia. Thank you for having this chat with me. I've been having chai while I've been chatting with you. So thank you very much. And all the very best. I'm sure we'll be in touch even after the elections. And I hope you call me up and you give me some good news.
Well, I hope so too. But yeah, look, I honestly hope, Salaha, that we get a lot of, people from that minority groups onto council. I mean, for us, we're also paving the way. I mean, if you look at it, our First Nations people, we don't have them on council. Why? So, in our own small way, we're actually paving the road for that to happen as well. So I think, never underestimate the powers of what the new candidates are doing. We've not only just opened the road for so many possibilities, but I think we started a good thing here, didn't we? Don't we?
Absolutely.
We're on the right path.
You came. Yes, we are all on the right path and we'll get there. At least
we'll
leave Australia a better place for our children.
Yeah, and
So
look, I mean, look, if we don't get in this time, at least we have the experience, so we know we can do better the next time round.
absolutely, and hopefully there will be no more COVID then. So yes, thank
Thank you
you
for
very much.
having me.
Thank you for coming. Good night, everyone. Stay well, stay safe, and if you're in Melbourne, stay warm. I will see you soon. Bye, Vasalia.
Bye bye.